The Being a Big Podcast, and we're at ConnectiCon 2013. You can see it's early Saturday morning. This place is already packed to people. There's people everywhere. You guys can go walk through. It's fine. He's way up there. He can't see you. So as you can see, there's people everywhere. I'm next to a TARDIS. This day is already awesome for me because you know I love Doctor Who. There's dialects and a TARDIS. This day can't get much better than this, but we're gonna try. We'll find plenty of things. Stay tuned for more. It's the Being a Big Podcast. And we're back here on the Being a Big Podcast with the Zombie King, Arthur Suydam. Arthur, tell us a little about how you got involved in comic books, of all things.
How I got involved in comic books? Well, I was burned really bad when I was about 5 years old, and I spent a year in a hospital. And my parents, you know, when you're laid up in the hospital, they bring you magazines and flowers, etc., candy or whatever. So they brought me comic books. I started reading comic books. And then when I got out of the hospital, as soon as my hands healed, my hands were burned very badly. I started drawing comic books, and you know, a lot of kids draw when they're young, and some of them stick to it, and some of them don't. And the ones that stick to it, a lot of those guys end up in the comic business, and so that was kind of me as well.
Nice. So how'd you get involved in the zombies? Because I know it's a relatively new, like, popular genre. How'd you go from just comic books to zombie comic books?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think what got the whole zombie thing going is the work that Robert Kirkman and I did together and separately. I'm actually working on The Walking Dead now as well. But Marvel Zombies is really what made the zombies become really hugely popular. Then after that, Walking Dead got signed by AMC, and then Plants vs. Zombies, on and so forth. But most of that stuff I think stemmed from the success of the Marvel Zombies, is what I'm told. How I got into zombies is I'm an anatomical artist, so I'm actually formally trained. When I was much younger, I'd seen the anatomical drawings of Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo, and it was a quality to their work that really appealed to me. So I wanted to get the kind of training that they had. And years later, I found a school close to where I live in New York City called the New York Academy of Figurative Art that was actually a recreation of the Academy University of Michelangelo, Raphael, and Leonardo da Vinci. And I went there, and I did a lot of anatomical studies. I did a lot of work with cadavers. We had to go, you had to draw cadavers, paint cadavers, and then sculpt cadavers. So basically you put the love of anatomy, put that together with a guy who loves comic books and horror movies, and this is what you get.
Now, when you started doing the Walking Dead, when you first started doing it, probably you didn't think of it then, but did you think it was going to be as huge as it's exploded? Like, now it's like, if you see Walking Dead, you know exactly what it is. It's not like it's like anything you have to explain to anybody what it is anymore.
Well, for me, I think Marvel Zombies relates more to me than The Walking Dead, because Marvel Zombies is the one.
Again, another thing you don't really need to explain.
Yeah, no. Well, when it first came around, everybody was poo-pooing it, and online on all the blogs, they were going like, "Yeah, this was okay, but they'll probably blow it next issue." It was that kind of thing.
I was excited for it.
Yeah, it wasn't until the trade came out a year and a half later, where they could actually read the whole thing in one sitting, that people really got how good Marvel Zombies was. And so, but I thought as soon as I started working on Marvel Zombies, working on the concept for it, I said, even if this is done really badly, this should be pretty big, because it's exactly what the fans want. One of the things about coming to these shows is you're able to take the pulse of what people like and what they don't like, and what they want and what they don't want. And one of the mistakes that the big mainstream companies make is one, that they think that they know what the fans want, or that what they think they could put something out and then kind of force the fans to like it, and that's not the way it works. It works really the opposite of that. It works that you have to know what they want and give them something. And what the fans want is they want something fresh. They don't want the same thing they've been reading for 50 years. They want something fresh, and that's what Marvel Zombies was. So from what I could tell, I seem to be like the one guy around that was saying, this is going to be huge. And it was. And everybody else was like, it's just going to be another thing that's going to come out, and in 2 weeks people are going to forget about it. Yeah. That was not the case.
Yeah, so much so they even did a second one of them, even a second series of them.
Well,
which was
second, third, fourth, fifth, and
they're like
sixth,
six of them. They're like,
number 7.
It's crazy. Now, you've done tons of comic book characters, especially with Marvel Zombies, pretty much everybody, but you've done individual ones as well. And when I first saw your stuff was on the Deadpool covers, which was like my favorite Deadpool covers ever. Especially the Chimichanga one that's like the Nirvana cover. That's like my favorite one ever. But who was like your favorite comic book character to draw? Is there like one guy you're like, when you first got to draw him, you were like, that's who I've always like wanted to draw when I was a kid and all that?
Well, I kind of started on comics reading DC. And then as soon as I discovered Marvel Comics, I look at it that I graduated to Marvel Comics. It's a lot more sophisticated storytelling, a lot more sophisticated character development. So once I got onto Marvel, I was addicted to Marvel. So basically the covers that I do for a lot of the Marvel Zombies and Merc with a Mouth and those series, I'm picking my favorite comic covers, my old Marvel, especially from the 1960s. I had all those comics. I love those comics. I loved it. I know those stories by heart. So I was picking my favorite comics and then doing like parodies, reinventions of the covers.
Awesome. So not only are you in a drawer of comic book covers, you also are a musician.
Right.
You're like a little Renaissance man. You do everything. So how'd you get involved in the music? Was that the same thing back when you were younger? Did you just be like, I want to?
Yeah, well, actually, my relatives are all artists, and they happen to be musicians as well. So I was just, I'm just following suit from whatever. My father was a country western musician. All my uncles and aunts are all bluegrass musicians. So it's just something that I grew up with, which was drawing, painting, and being around music, and then practicing instruments. I play about 5 instruments. So that's kind of been a dual career for me.
Now, so we were talking before, we did an interview about all the people you've played with and stuff like that.
Right.
Who was like the one person that you got to play with that you were like, that was the big one,
I don't really look at it that way. I kind of look at it, my enjoyment in playing the music is really what team of musicians can you put together that as an ensemble create a great sound. So there's no particular artist that I played with that made me kind of gaga or that kind of thing, because that's not really my interest and attraction to music. My interest and my attraction in music is it's really about creating good music. And interesting thing about it is you never know what combination of guys is going to turn out with something special. So a lot of times I'd have a lot of big name studio players playing with me, backing me up as my rhythm section, but that particular combination of guys, maybe the joint sound, the group sound really wasn't working, it wasn't happening, and so you never know. And then you end up with some guys who nobody's ever heard of, that haven't really been even playing that long, but you put them together in a group, and that group will sound amazing. I mean, it's kind of like talking about like Bruce Springsteen as maybe a kind of a good example of that. It's kind of like a garage band. With a really good singer-songwriter heading the band, leading the band. The Clash were another good example of that. The Sex Pistols, the Ramones. None of these guys were virtuosos. No. But the sound of the band, there was something special about the collection of that collection of guys and girls, in a group where they were able to, as a group, put out something special.
Wow. Very important. I'm totally baffled by that. All right, that's a great answer. So where are we going to see your stuff coming up? Is there any, I know you said you were back on Walking Dead. Right, are you doing The Walking Dead?
Walking Dead right now. I've got my own zombie series that I started 10 years ago that precedes all the stuff that I've just been, since that's one that I'm writing and actually doing the interiors for it. and I paint my interiors. It's taken me a long time to get it out, and I chip away at that in between working on all these other projects. So I'm working on that. I'm actually working on Army of Darkness for Dynamite Publishing right now. I'm working on X-Men for Marvel Comics. Working on a Tarzan project. I just did a cover to this big Tarzan project that's coming out, and I'm usually working on about 4 things at one time.
Wow, that's awesome. So if you're look for the name Suydam on the cover of a comic, because that's probably going to be a good comic because it's drawn really well. So thank you, Arthur, for doing an interview. It was very appreciated. It was really awesome to meet you. And we'll be back with more here in the Being a Big podcast. We're back here on the Being a Big podcast. We're here with the writer?
I'm the writer.
Writer of Atomic Robo. Tell us a bit about Atomic Robo.
Atomic Robo was a robot, and he's invented by Nikola Tesla in 1923, and our comic book follows Robo's adventures ever since.
All right, so how many books are there so far?
There are 7 trades. Then there's a sort of side series called Real Science Adventures, so that's 8 so far. And now we're working on the 8th volume of the regular series, so that's going to be 9. So yeah, we got sort of 8 with 9 sort of also coming out.
So where can people find Atomic Robo?
You can get it at your comic book stores. You can get it on online stores. You can get it at Amazon. You should get it.
Definitely should get it. So how did you get involved in Atomic Robo? Where did the idea come from?
Robots are cool, and history is cool. So I figured why not combine both of those and make a comic book out of it.
That's pretty awesome. So how long have you been involved? Like how long have you been writing the comic book? Is what I'm trying to say.
We started. Well, that's a long question and it's a long answer. But basically, I started thinking about it in 1996. Around 2006, I had a much better idea of what it should be, and found Scott Wegener, the artist, and brought him on as work for hire. But in like a week, he became co-creator because he was tossing out all of his ideas, and they were amazing. So we mashed all that together, and so yeah.
Now, who puts out Atomic Robo? Like, how'd you get it to whoever is the person that's putting it out?
Our publisher is Red 5 Comics. They're based out of Houston and also Calgary, which is an odd combination. They just discovered us online. We were posting some concept art and saying, hey, this is our upcoming project. We don't know what's going to happen with it, but, whatever. This was 2007 or so. And they said, hey, this looks cool. We're a new publisher. We want to start up some books. Send us the pitch. So we sent it to them. They said yes.
Very sweet. So see, all you have to do is just put your stuff out there and someone will see it.
Yeah.
So what do people have to look forward to in Atomic Robo, next coming issues?
The new series that's going on right now is Atomic Robo and the Savage Sword of Dr. Dinosaur. Dr. Dinosaur is a very popular villain character. He's kind of crazy and he thinks he's a time traveler, but probably isn't. And that's just a wild, crazy adventure in the depths of Hollow Earth where nothing makes sense at all. And we got a Kickstarter going on, just launched that on Thursday. That is for the official Tesladyne field guide. It is sort of like it's like an employee manual for being an action scientist in the real world, but dealing with things that will never actually happen, like dinosaur rampages, time travel, crap like that. But it's a lot of fun.
Time travel happens.
You can fall through time, I guess. Statistically, it could happen.
It's going to happen. I'm building a TARDIS.
Oh, well, I'll need some input then, I guess.
I'll call you. We'll get together. All right. So Atomic Robo, get out there to your local comic book store, buy it. It's written by Brian. We're here with comic book artist Michael Golden. Michael, tell us how you... Yes, he's right here. Tell us about how you got into comic book artistry.
That's a much longer story than you have probably got room on your web space to know. We'll just say that a friend of a friend of a friend pushed me in that direction, probably because they just wanted to get rid of me. And then the rest is history.
Very cool. So as we've looked down your table and look all the stuff you've drawn like pretty much everyone I could think of. superhero-wise.
probably true.
Yeah. So what's your favorite superhero to draw that you really enjoy drawing?
I don't have a favorite. That's an easy one to answer. I don't have a favorite.
All right. Okay.
And there's
Very politically correct.
There's a reason why I don't. No, it's not politically correct. Actually, it's as unpolitically correct as you can get.
Okay.
The reason is because I don't do this job for my satisfaction. I don't draw superheroes, I don't draw comic books, so just so I can draw Batman or so I can draw Spider-Man or whatever. I do this for a job, so I can get paid, but mostly the agenda is for you guys. So that you will like it, so that you will read it, so that you are entertained. If I come to the table with my agenda, you're going to be reading my garbage, my baggage. That's not what I get paid to do. That's not why you plunk down your money for a comic book. You want to read Spider-Man. You don't want to read Michael Golden's Spider-Man. You want to read Superman. You know, you want to read the characters that you know and enjoy. So I don't have a favorite. I don't bring my garbage, my baggage to the table. I do it the way the editor wants it and the way the fans and the readers want to read it.
That's very cool. Was there any comic books that you, when you were growing up, did you read any comic books that you were a really big fan of that you've gotten to draw and been like?
No, there weren't any comic books where I grew up. But that's a very bald generalized statement. I can't say that I ever saw really any superhero comic books growing up, but that may not exactly be a correct memory, because whenever we went to the city or over to a relative's house, you know, their kids may have in fact had comic book, superhero comic books. My mother subscribed to a magazine called now the name escapes me. It's Childcraft Highlight or something like that. Yeah, Highlights. Yeah. And when I was a kid, they were serializing Tintin.
Yes.
And I read Tintin. I couldn't wait for that magazine to show up. I love Tintin. That was basically my exposure to comic books right off the bat. If I've been influenced by anything, it was Hergé's work. But you'll never see it in any of my work. My mother, when she bought comic books, would buy them in big, huge boxes for $1 from the Salvation Army or whatever, and those were meant to entertain us on long trips, and they were usually Donald Duck or Richie Rich or Archie comics. I can't really say I was really exposed to superhero comics until I actually got into the business. That again is a generalization. I remember Steve Ditko's, Spider-Man from somewhere. I remember Nick Cardy's, Teen Titans from somewhere. I always loved Batlash. Always loved Enemy Ace. I remember reading the war comic books from, I guess, probably from DC or Charlton when I was a kid. But I was never really that much of a fan of any of it until, I actually had to do it for a living. And I don't know where I was going with that thought, but I hope you guys followed it.
So, is there any comic books coming up that people can start looking out that you're drawing now?
Yes, but I can't tell you without having
killing me later.
No, killing you right now on screen, on camera.
Not again. Happens all the time. I'm like Kenny from South Park.
I'm gonna make you sniff this until you pass out.
Oh, I think I did that in high school. That's why I'm doing television.
That would explain a lot, right? Okay. All right.
So, is there anything on the shelves right now that people can grab?
That's a good question. I tend not to pay attention to that sort of thing. That's a good question.
Because how long is it from when you draw it to when it actually hits the shelves? Is there like,
Well,
do you like do it like a year ahead of time and then like a year later it comes out?
I'm doing stuff now, comic book wise, that in the vernacular is unscheduled. I do it, then the publisher does whatever they. Excuse me. Sorry, folks. You know,
It's a wolf raker or something out there.
It was that sausage I ate for dinner.
Yeah.
I do my job, and then it.
He really likes that horn. Just going for it. All right. Must have worked. His woman showed up.
His one. There you go. Now we understand the context of this.
Yeah. Hey.
His woman and her fox.
Yeah, hey.
Showed up.
And they're not the same thing, surprisingly.
Okay, where were we? Oh yeah, I do the work.
Stuff that you
and it goes off to the publisher, and then they decide when they are going to do with it whatever they are going to do with it. That's it. Out of my hands, out of sight, out of mind. I couldn't tell you. However, should you need to know, go to EV Inc., the Facebook page, or evinc.com, and my editor and publisher usually puts it up as soon as we're informed that it's going to see the light of day.
Well, there you go. Let's keep an eye out for that.
Right now,
no idea.
I have no idea.
That's fine. Well, is there a character that's easier to draw than other characters, or a draw that's like really difficult to draw?
Yeah. Invisible girl in a snowstorm after she ate the sandwich. Perfect.
Sold. I'll do those all day. Well,
then there's Galactus on the other side of that coin.
There you go. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're very busy.
Welcome,
You've been here all day. We've stopped 3 times, and he's been signing and drawing away all day. So thank you for taking the moment.
What I do.
Hey, well, it's really awesome. Everything you've done, everything we've seen is like, blows my mind that people can do this. I can't even draw a box. So thank you so much for taking the time.
That's why I draw funny looking superheroes.
There you go. Perfect. So thank you, Michael, for taking the time out of your busy day. And
thank you, folks.
We'll be back with more. We're here with Billy Tucci, comic book artist. So Billy, tell us how you got involved in comic books.
Woo, well, Mark, I'll tell you, it's been, as a career, it was at the San Diego Comic-Con 20 years ago. This week, I guess, that I had, for the past couple of months, I decided, I went to school for illustration. I'm like, you know what, I want to do comics. I want to draw X-Men and stuff. So I started drawing this. I had a bunch of pages of this story I wanted to tell, and I figured, you know what, let me tell something original, my own character and all, and went to San Diego, tried to get work. Nobody offered me any work. And what I did was I went home and I decided, you know, the hell with this, let me do it myself, and that's when I self-published She Number 1. And those pages that I had with me were from She Number 1, with the first, you know, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 pages of the first issue of She. And March of '94, a few months later, it was launched, and now that's about 3 million comics later. So, pretty cool.
So for those folks out there who might not know, you want to tell us a little about She, the comic book?
Yep, She is, and some people might not know because I did it for 10 years, debuting in '94 to 2004. And I got to tell you, I just got burnt out. And plus, I love comics, so it gave me an opportunity to start drawing all these characters I loved growing up, you know, for Marvel and DC. But she's basically a modern-day samurai fable, really. Nice. And it's all deeply rooted in Japanese history and the warrior monks of medieval Japan that has since carried over this sort of shadow war between factions of Japanese society that has carried over for the past 1,000 years into all walks of society, Japanese society, politics, theater, the arts. And Anna is basically a soldier drafted into this war. And that's basically the story of it, of how this girl, copes with warfare, in this really psychological and, all too many times physical battlefield that is her life.
And so you did that for 10 years.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you're able to do a whole conclusion and everything in your final ending, or
we ended. The last time we ended was that she was in Japan and she was heading back to New York after her, let's say, sect. It wasn't a clan, but people might think of it as a clan. Was literally wiped out by their elders. By their rivals. And her grandfather and three other old men, old Sohai warriors, were the last to flee to New York or to the safety of the West for hiding. And the news story carries over for our 20th anniversary. We're bringing her back. That it's going to be 20 years after the fact. And Anna has a different life, and she's married and has a 16-year-old daughter, and all of this is behind her, or so she thinks. Yeah. When her daughter does something that re-triggers all these events.
It's never an easy life out there in comic book land.
No.
So, like you said, you drew for Marvel and DC and all that. What's been like the one comic book character that you drew and you're like, man, this is the one that you were a fan of before you started drawing, and now you get to draw?
Sergeant Rock. Yeah, Sergeant Rock, definitely. Yeah. And he's pretty much that. That's it. I mean, I'd love to do The Rocketeer. Dave Stevens was a friend of mine. But I can't tell you, I'm really happy doing my own stuff. Yeah. And hopefully we'll do more Rock, Sergeant Rock. But aside from that, we'll go on with She. But I do love Batman. I love Catwoman, and I love the Golden Age. I'd love to do Golden Age stories for DC. Take their characters, not mess with their continuity at all, and do Golden Age,
look and all that.
Actually do books and miniseries that actually take place in the 30s and the 40s. I would love to do that.
That would be an epic series. I would read that. I would read that.
Yeah. Pink, communists. All, have fun with that.
I love Sergeant Rock, and I love looking at your stuff. It's awesome. It looks really cool.
Thank you.
He's drawing Thor right now as I'm sitting here, and it's like watching Thor come to life in our own little segment as I'm sitting here.
I never draw Thor. I never draw him.
You're doing a very good job. It looks like him.
That Walt Simonson, It's kind of a moot point to try to draw Thor.
Yeah. It's kind of. So I've seen you got a huge plethora of.
Plethora.
A plethora, yes, of. Of comic books. A lot of females, I'm noticing.
That's what the people want. Give the people what they want. Right, Damo? Give the people what they want. All the time. So
it's a good pitch man you got there. You got a good hype man. He's a great hype man, I'm telling you. Hire the best.
That's my fellow firefighter brother right there.
So not only you're an artist, you're also a firefighter?
I do lots of things. I'm also a world-class fencer. No, I'm not. That's a lie.
Okay. All right.
As opposed, I'm not a firefighter either.
No.
Damo's a firefighter, but he's teaching me.
Just point the water towards the fire.
Is that all that's in it?
That's the main
point
thing.
The water towards the fire.
That's one of my best friends is a firefighter, and I asked him what's the most important thing about being a firefighter, and he told me point the water towards the fire. I said that's pretty simple. You don't really need to know much else.
Is he a truck guy or an engine guy? Do you know?
I have no idea. He's usually drunk.
He's usually drunk, as you do.
Firefighters.
As firefighters do.
They deserve it. They get to hang out in fires all day.
Right.
The least they could do is get drunk.
Right.
So is there anything else besides that that's out there now that people can see on the shelves?
Yeah, if you go, I have my Christmas book over here, A Child is Born, which is just won the Christian small publisher book of the year. So we're real psyched about that, and it's basically a telling of the Christmas story, and that's a dream project of mine, and it's getting huge. So I'm really, really happy about that. Real excited. And I'm also doing a book that's coming out next week called Roll Hard. And that is about security contractors in Iraq. And it tells the real seedy side of private contractors that work for our State Department that people don't know of.
Yeah.
And they called mercenaries and all, but they're actually not working for a foreign government. They're working for their own government.
Yeah.
They're security guards, but security guards that get shot at and blown up with IEDs every single day. And it's a real hardcore, brutal book that shows the real side of a hardcore and brutal war.
Yeah. So when you're drawing something like that, do you actually what kind of research do you have to do and get into it?
I make friends with a lot of the contractors who are great guys, brave men. A lot of them are former police officers. Majority of them are former military, Army, Marines, and this is what they do. And they're really patriotic, and they really feel they're doing work for their country. And but it's sad. A lot of them get killed, and there's no flags for them, even though they're in combat.
Yeah.
You've heard about some of them like Blackwater and things like that with some of that. There's gunfights, a lot of controversy, stuff like that. But that's like everything. When you have 100,000 contractors in a country the size of California, you're going to get some incidents. You know what I mean? Especially with it's a war. There's savages out there. It's a savage place. It's Afghanistan. Iraq. I mean, there's nothing pretty about it.
Yeah.
It's war.
So when is that going to start hitting the shelves?
It's going to hit the shelves. It'll be through comic shops for December. Might be for November if we can get it in, the solicitation, but it's for December.
All right, so just in time for Christmas.
Just in time for Christmas.
That's not really Christmassy, but just
but if it's out
but
for
the
December,
Christmas book,
it'll ship way before Christmas, right?
But you can get the Christmas book, which is perfect for Christmas.
Books. Yeah, I do all sorts.
You covered all the pages.
Stories,
Everything's covered.
Christmas stories.
Yeah.
Hey, Caitlin. Caitlin is our zombie pinup. Look how awesome she looks.
Look at that.
With a ukulele.
She plays music. She's a zombie music. That's awesome. So, well, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you,
I know
boss.
you've been busy.
Good seeing you, man.
We've stopped by like 3 times, and he's been drawing as well, constantly.
We got a break, which is cool.
Yeah.
Right, Damo? We got a break. Right.
It's a great yes man. You're to hire a guy like that. I had to get one of those guys. Well, thanks again. It's been great talking to you and great meeting you.